In this specific video, we're going to be talking about steak. So let's go over exactly what we're talking about here. We're looking at going to your butcher and taking a cheap steak, a steak that I'm talking like under $3 steak, and taking a cheap steak like that and making it into something that tastes expensive, something that people won't, whether it be your family, your friends, anybody, they won't even be able to taste that it is a cheap steak. So here's what I'm talking about. I just went to my local butcher and picked up this steak, and this specific one is, of course, under $3. It's just a cube steak. You could actually go there to your local butcher and ask for really any kind of a, you might even have to go back there, but this one was just laying out. So what we're gonna do here is two key words. Pan fry. We are going to pan fry our steak. Why? Because it is the quickest. It is the quickest way. So we're going to take this steak. Here are the seasonings we'll be using. We're not going to be using scissors. We'll be using these seasonings. Garlic salt is my primary choice of salt because it adds that salty seasoning, but also the garlic gives it a really good taste. In my personal opinion, I love garlic, so we might actually add a little more garlic to that, along with onion powder. I'm a firm believer in that. But if you happen to have any seasoned steak rub, this happens to be a Grill Mates brand, that is what we'll be using. And of course, pepper is a must. Whether it be fresh ground pepper or this is just the basic stuff you get at any Walmart. And one thing I'll say about these seasonings, they typically have paprika. It's an overall really good blend to add to any steak. Here's the ingredients in your typical steak seasoning. So now one of the tips to cooking any really good steak is to let your steak sit out to get about room temperature. This will provide the entire steak to be an even temperature, where if you were just to take it out of the fridge remember, if your steak is frozen, you're going to want to put that in the fridge overnight to thaw it out. Then from the fridge, before you cook it, let it sit out about 20 minutes. That way the center of your steak will get really, will not be cold, which will provide a more even temp. Otherwise, you run the risk of actually burning the outside of your steak. And I'm one of those guys, it's all personal preference as far as steak cooking goes. Do you want a rare steak? Do you like a little blood? Do you like a medium rare? Do you like a medium? Do you like it burned? I'm one of those medium rare kind of guys, and typically with these cheap steaks like this, they're going to be thin. And what I mean by that is, so you could spend $10 on a thick cut Angus steak at any Super Value. Well, these steaks that are under $3, they're going to be thin, and they're going to be pretty light. And like portion size, I would say it would feed one person. I wouldn't buy this thinking you're going to feed, 3 of your kids. That's just not going to happen. So with this steak, you're going to put it on a hot pan. All right, so now we're going to preheat our pan, and you're going to want your pan piping hot. One of the few ingredients that I didn't list before is we're going to use some organic extra virgin olive oil. You don't have to use organic. I use organic because I'm kind of one of those people. And butter. We're going to add the butter later, but starting out, we're going to put this oil in our piping hot pan once the pan is hot. One way I do this is I will take my, I'll turn this on high, and you're just going to, ideally cast iron would be good. And this looks dirty. It's not dirty. I just washed it. So we're going to let that get piping hot, and we're going to come out to our steak. Our steak has been left out for over 20 minutes, actually, and you can tell it's really thin. All right, so here it is. This is just a cheap, like I said. You see all these grains in here. These are great because we're going to get all of our flavor in there. So you can just discard your wrapping. that came with your steak. And we're going to take our steak rub. Otherwise, like I said, you could use your salt. Using the steak rub, so you undo it. And I usually sprinkle a little in here so I don't overdump. And then you're just going to, pretty good amount, liberally, and you're going to rub it in. You're going to rub your seasoning into the grains, get it all nice and in there. And then when you're done with that, I'd recommend, I'm going to put a little bit of garlic salt on top of there. This steak can be done in under, 2 minutes. I mean, it really doesn't take long. Take it in there. I'm going to throw a little bit of pepper on top of that. And then I'm just going to mix it all in there together. And then we're going to do the same to the other side. Again, same exact step. Take your seasoning. You're going to sprinkle it on there. Taking your garlic salt. Sprinkling some on there. And garlic salt isn't really that salty in compared to just straight up salt. A little bit of pepper, and mixing it in the fibers of the meat. You can't put too much on, by the way. Steak seasoning, your steak can take it. Now, if this was a thicker steak, this is really thin. If this was a thicker steak, now you could literally just, throw it on in there. But this is not a thick steak. Okay. That should be good right there. Now that our pan is nice and hot, we will lay our olive oil on it. You can use any oil, peanut oil, any kind of oil you cook with. This is the most common. We're going to put it on our pan, and we're going to lay our steak right on it. Now, what we're looking for when we lay our steak on our pan is a really quick, we want it seared. We don't want it boiled. We want to sear that sucker right away. It's going to create an awesome caramelization. And when it's browned, we're going to flip it. And this steak is going to cook really fast. I'm saying if this course wasn't a half hour, you can have this steak cooked in 2 minutes. This is a under 5 minute meal right here. So we're going to throw some of that on our pan and throw some olive oil on our pan, and we'll throw these steaks on.